West Virginia actually has fantastic seats. We are in a section that is in, we're not on the floor, but we're just off the floor and we're off to stage left. We had a fantastic view, and directly across the arena all night long was Vice President Harris and her husband and Governor Tim Walz and his wife. And it was kind of surreal to think that if they, any time they look over, they could see all of us over there.
John Henry was a little man, sit on property. He was long and wide and lonesome crying, oh, the hammer be the death of me, hammer be the death of me.
Welcome to currently the Authentic West Virginia podcast and a daily update thanks to Troy Miller, a delegate at large from West Virginia there in Chicago, and also a candidate for the House of Delegates from Jefferson County. So Troy, thanks very much for being here. And why don't you first give us your first impressions from the last night's Monday convention?
First, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be one of the people updating anyone on this. And in no uncertain terms, I think it is safe to say that the Democratic Party right now, nationally and within West Virginia, based on our delegation, is more united than it has been in any time I can remember. And the messaging is really coming around to being very very clear and concise about who we're fighting for, which are working people, what we're trying to do, which is make sure that every child has the opportunity they need, and where the enemies, not or where the opponents are, and that is like the greedy corporations and billionaire class. And we heard last night from an array of speakers from people you might consider the more left wing of the party, AOC, for instance, to the more moderate wing of the party with Senator Jim Clyburn, or as some people might think, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But the messaging throughout was incredibly heartening to me as somebody who has been very much trying to get us as Democrats to really start talking clearly about who we're fighting for and what we're fighting against, really. And what I think is probably I feel really good this morning. I think a large part of it is it's such positive messaging. We're really talking about what we can do, and not so much how bad the other side is, so much as how good our policies are, what we can do if we have the greater majority in the Senate and the House, and we elect Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz to the White House. Those are my first impressions. So I realize now I could talk for a long time about all this.
Well, let me get to one thing that you only get a sense of when you're looking at the coverage of it or watching it, and that is that it seemed like a full house. It seemed like people had energy. I'm afraid to ask where West Virginia was sat in the auditorium, but where were you guys? How was it like there, and how did the whole energy or lack of it feel from the delegates?
It was very energetic. There were some logistical troubles with the bus line trying to get everyone to the United Center. But when you're talking about moving thousands of people from dozens of hotels all around the city to try to get into a single arena for a particular time, that's going to happen. And I think they did a fine job with it. West Virginia actually has fantastic seats. We are in a section that is we're not on the floor, but we're just off the floor, and we're off to stage left. We had a fantastic view, and directly across the arena all night long was Vice President Harris and her husband and Governor Tim Walz and his wife, and it was kind of surreal to think that if any time they looked over, they could see all of us over there. It was the energy is real. It took a while to get into the arena, and there was definitely a moment or two where I thought I could watch this from the hotel and save myself stress. But I am really glad that I braved through it, and through plenty of bus riding, plenty of walking, Secret Service checkpoints, all of the whole 9 yards. It was probably the most secure place on earth last night in the United Center, because of the amount of presidents, former presidents, the amount of leadership in that room. This is my first Democratic National Convention. It's the first in-person one that's happened in 8 years, and it is really you can feel the excitement. You could almost cut it with a knife. It is so palpable, so tangible, and frankly, as a delegate from West Virginia, the delegates from the other states are really happy to hear from us, and they are really excited about the opportunities that we have in the state of West Virginia. And one thing I keep on repeating to everybody is that when people go, well, do you guys really have a chance there? Or isn't it a very red state, very conservative? And I just look at them and I say, well, look at how much money the other side has to spend to keep it that way. And tell me how conservative it is. If they really believed they had this state in the bag and that everybody just agreed with them on their own, they wouldn't spend that money. They're spending millions of dollars in West Virginia because they need to keep telling that story, because they can see the tide changing, and they can see that working people all over the country, in West Virginia, in Appalachia, in rural areas, have done 4 years of Donald Trump, and we're finishing up 4 years of President Biden, and the results are clear. Last night, they made Sean Fain with the UAW talked at length about how Trump promised to bring all these jobs to Lordstown, Ohio, and he's going to say, don't sell your house because we're going to bring all this great manufacturing. Well, the plant closed, and he didn't do anything to help them. And now there is manufacturing again in Lordstown, Ohio, because of the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act, and the suite of legislation that through a narrow majority, where Vice President Kamala Harris was the deciding vote in the Senate, going back to our high school and middle school civics of what does the vice president do? Well, in this case, a whole hell of a lot for the country and for the state of West Virginia, and again for rural areas and for Appalachia and beyond. I mean, it is. I don't want to be sitting here just spouting off all of the same things that we heard at the convention last night. You can see anyone listening to this can find much better speeches for much more prominent speakers saying the same things as I'm saying right now. But it's all worth repeating.
Okay, so just briefly, where were the highlights last night? If we're going back to take a look, where are the maybe 2 or 3 things that really you would want to come back and talk to folks here in West Virginia about that happened last night?
I really want to make sure that people in West Virginia are paying attention to the growing union movement, the reiteration, the statements again and again last night of people acknowledging that. And I thought it was very fortuitous, or I'm not sure what the word is, but I was telling people, West Virginia's best days, when we were doing really well as a state in the middle of the 20th century, is when unions were the strongest that they were in this country. And then big business started fighting back and eroding union rights, and leading to the point now we're a right to work for less state. But last night there were multiple speakers who, America is strong when unions are strong, and I can't agree more. It would be hard to pick out highlights. There were plenty of moments where I had chills down my spine, as you just had the overwhelming sense of unity, of solidarity, to continue talking in the union terms. You could tell that President Biden he's no longer conflicted about having stepped aside. He is fully stepped into the position of this is the important thing for him to do for the good of this country. And I think polling is showing that again and again. And now he has a role to play, not as a candidate for this election, but as the outgoing president who has delivered some of the greatest economic recovery that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime. One of the fastest economic recovery we've seen. And the work that needs to continue. I really enjoyed hearing from Sean Payne. I keep on saying that, but it's true. And Secretary Hillary Clinton gave a very good speech. I really enjoyed, for our history nerds who are listening to the to this broadcast, go back and watch that speech. And she starts talking about the freedoms that we're fighting for, and they are almost directly lifted from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's four freedoms that he laid out in 1944, upon which was the basis for the second Bill of Rights, or an economic Bill of Rights, which is also in our Democratic platform now as a 21st century economic Bill of Rights. And all of that, I mean, that's an amazing set of sentences to say, because it was not that long ago when I think it was just everybody just kind of said, if you asked them about what's going on with politics, oh, Democrats are in disarray. Oh, they don't know what's going. They can't agree on anything. There's the far left wing of the party, and then there's the centrist and the corporatists and all this. And anybody who could walk out of that arena last night and still say something like that is probably getting paid to say something like that, because there's no way that you could watch that programming from last night and not get the sense that Democrats are more united. And I don't want to say we're all in lockstep or in line or anything like that, because there is a tremendous diversity of how people are approaching what we're saying. But the unity about what we're fighting for, who we're fighting for, and how we're going to deliver on that is really just really hopeful. And more than hopeful, victory is almost tangible. And I am glad to say that there's tempered expectations also. Nobody is going to leave this convention and say, that's it, we're done. We're just going to wait till November. Everybody's going to leave this convention and hit the ground running to do the work for every candidate they can, and not just Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz, but also down ballot to candidates like Glenn Elliott in West Virginia, like Steve Williams in West Virginia, like me running for House of Delegates in West Virginia. I will say very simply that I feel better about how voters will turn out for me and because of the top of the ticket than I did earlier this year. And that's nothing to say that President Biden isn't a fantastic president in all this, but I think there is a substantial enthusiasm gap between how people were feeling a month or 2 months ago about our candidate and how we are feeling now about our candidates. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from Governor Tim Walz. One thing I'll say about the convention is it's difficult during the day because there's so much going on. And fortunately, there's almost 30 of us delegates here from West Virginia. And so, people can be in all the different places and we could all get the pictures from each other and go, oh, I missed that speaker because I was seeing this other great speaker over here instead. Oh, this person came right over from there. And people in our delegation heard from Governor Tim Walz yesterday in one of the caucuses. People heard from Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. People heard from, it's just a who's who, open up the front pages and people were out and about. Again, I just can't overstate how exciting it is to be here and how exciting it is to be a Democrat right now in my totally
Okay.
buy it. Yeah.
Well, one other thing that happened last night, I want to ask you, and if you got into it when they were speaking, but I remember, I think I have a picture here, and maybe I'll show it on the podcast of someone holding a sign, "Not your body, not your choice," at a rally where everybody was wearing red shirts, talking about Roe and the need to protect reproductive rights for women here in West Virginia. So there were some speakers. Were you there for that? And what was your impression?
I was not there for that, but reproductive rights, reproductive freedom is one of the, if it's not the top issue um, for everyone here, it is one of the top issues. And I have to apologize because that is one of the main things that people are united on here. We heard some very powerful stories last night from people who um, lost their child and almost lost their wife because of the inability to get an abortion and to get the care they needed in Texas. We heard from a young woman who was raped by her stepfather when she was 12 years old. And she had the opposite experience where she was told, you have options here. And, what an incredible, it's hard for me to talk about because it was such a powerful series of speakers. And I mean, I wouldn't wish any of those stories upon anyone, but at the very least, we need to have we need to have reproductive freedoms and rights to the extent that when these truly horrific things happen, that people can get the best care, the best medical care from the doctors that they need. And right now in West Virginia, women cannot. And even though people can say, oh, there's these exceptions written into the law, that doesn't matter. It is a functional ban because the doctors who will perform those operations are not going to stay in West Virginia. They're not going to keep clinics open so that when one woman comes through with all of the legal challenges and everything, and they still might have a prosecution hanging over their head if somebody says, no, you didn't meet all the criteria. That is a functional ban, and it is a functional 0-day ban in West Virginia. So for women in West Virginia, this is absolutely it's a critical election, and that's true for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you have children, you want to have children, you don't want to have children. This election is about whether we're going to have an economy and a society that produces freedom and uplifts every person and is there for people to get the care they need when something awful is done to them, or for any of this is an absolutely essential election, because the other side, frankly, and I don't even want to talk about them too much because I feel like we're getting through to the American people and to West Virginians in a way that if we start talking about what they're saying, it will dilute our own message. But they don't have a coherent vision for how to help anyone but themselves and their donors, and a vision of how to dismantle America and dismantle all of what makes America great now. And they're doing it. They want to do it under this idea of making America great again by destroying everything that has that allows people to thrive in this country as it is. And what we're fighting for is to build on and expand those things, fill in the gaps where we aren't able to provide. For instance, in West Virginia, reproductive care, make a nationwide codification of Roe or something similar to that, to make sure that women and patients can, again, get the care they need when they need it, without the line last night that got an incredible applause. And there were a lot of lines that got incredible applause last night. A patient's a room in a hospital is not big enough for a patient and a doctor in the entire U.S. government. It's way too small for all that. And so they want to put in a nationwide abortion ban. They have said this. This is something that Donald Trump is basically bragging about and running on. It's you can tell that they are serious about it. And a lot of people didn't believe that they were serious about overturning Roe, and here we are. So it is one of the main themes of this week, and we're going to hear a lot more about it. I know that one of the caucus meetings yesterday, they were distributing condoms that had very catchy slogans that are, at least one of them is not broadcast appropriate at all.
That's okay. Bring him back. Bring him back. But wanted to thank you again so much for being there and then reporting back to us here in West Virginia about it. I'm hoping that we can do this every day, the following the night's events. I hope that it's a little bit easier logistically the second night, so you get in there, and I really appreciate that. Troy, do you have, if people do want to get in contact with you, would you like to give some of any information you want about
Absolutely.
how to follow you?
I can be found on my campaign can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you want to look for me easily on Google, you want to use my middle initial. It's Troy N. Miller. And you can go to my website and email me directly. My campaign website is troy4wv.com. That's TROYFORWV.com. And all of these are great avenues to get in touch with me. And I answer every email I can as soon as I can. So, and you can tweet at me, you can shoot an Instagram post at me, and find me on Facebook. You can find my personal Facebook or my campaign Facebook. If I don't know you, I might not friend you on my personal Facebook, but
Okay.
Please reach out. And, thank you so much for putting this together, for inviting me on to talk about this, for getting this to West Virginians without the layers of advertisers and everything else that comes with the national media. And they have their own story they want to tell, and some of it I agree with, some of it doesn't ring true in our experience in West Virginia. It doesn't matter what outlet it is, Fox, MSNBC, or any of these, they miss the mark a lot of the time, and they tell the story they want to tell about us. And so thank you so much for putting this together. And one of the reasons I'm proud to be here as a delegate from West Virginia is so that we can tell our own stories, so that we can start pushing back even within our own party, because there's been so much myth making about who West Virginian Democrats are. And we've been sort of pigeonholed for a long time. And I can tell you, there's just under 30 of us here for the delegation, but we're not what people have said we are all this time. And I don't think voters in West Virginia are what they've said they are. One thing I'll say before we go about our situation in West Virginia is people here tell me, oh, it's a very red state. Are you ever, voters are that's just how they are. They're conservative and they'll always vote for the Republicans, right? And I look at them, I go, look at how much money they have to spend to retain their races. Look at how much money, for instance, Patrick Morrissey is spending to defeat Steve Williams. If he believed that the voters agreed with him on their own, he would stop spending any of that and let them decide. Their message is not popular, and so they have to spend that kind of money. Our message is popular. They've got money, we've got people, and that's how we're going to win. We might not turn this state blue at the top of the ticket this year, but we can sure as hell start turning it blue from the down ballot up. We can put Glenn Elliott in the U.S. Senate. We can put Steve Williams into the governor's office, and we can send me to the House of Delegates, along with a number of other candidates who are fantastic. So thank you again, Daniel.
Thank you, Troy, and look forward to the next few days. If you have any selfies with you and anybody else, include them and send them to me, and I'll include them in the podcast in the coming days. Thanks so much again for reporting from Chicago.